In the era of digital downloads, it's pretty easy to get any game you want, for any platform you want, at any given moment, instantly, without having any real problems except pulling out your credit card. Right now we take for granted services like Steam and have them as our standard, but this wasn't always the case. If you were a kid in the early 2000s, getting new video games wasn't that straightforward, and we can pretty much sum up the average experience with mainly three possibilities. Actually going at a game store and buying them, mostly full price, or even being ripped off by having them rented out to you, waiting for the games or demos to come out with magazines, which was a big thing on PC, especially in Europe, which had a legacy of doing this being set by the microcomputers era in the UK, or, well, piracy. But sometimes there was a fourth way, and we have to talk about cereals. Yes, actual cereals.
Reese's Puffs, eat 'em up, eat 'em up, eat 'em up, eat 'em up.
It wasn't that uncommon during the late 90s and early 2000s to have PC games given to you as gifts in cereal boxes. The most popular example of this would be the 1996 Chex Quest, which was effectively a kid-friendly Doom mod and also the first game to be ever released in cereal boxes. Yes, that's a weird milestone to set. Following this path, a lot of games were put by Kellogg's into the cereal boxes, with classics like Age of Empires becoming childhood staples for many people after their original release. Heck, even Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was released as a Nutri-Grain promo. All three games were a perfect match for kids who would probably just run them on their dad office computer, which clearly didn't have a lot of graphics power to begin with, and it was a nice and cheap way to let them enjoy classics. General Mills and Kellogg's were definitely doing the right move here, but, well, while this was happening, the competition was watching. Nestle, which some of you might know as the most evil company you'll probably have to deal with to get a chocolate snack, had seen the cereal game boxes craze and wanted to capitalize on this. And so they struck a deal with the developer and publisher Empire Interactive, which some of you may know for being the publisher of Flatout. The deal was initially made to put EJ, a music production software Empire decided to buy, in cereal boxes because it was the 2000s and electronic music was everywhere. Probably this wasn't the most foresighted idea they ever had, but well, they tried. This deal then quickly became a scheme for Empire to put their budget video game offerings in cereal boxes, having Nestle pay for the licensing fees. But well, who exactly was Empire to begin with? The UK-based company was active since 1987, mostly dabbling with licensed games and porting other already existing games to consoles, with unremarkable titles like Yogi Bear's Cartoon Capes being some of their first published games. But after a lot of shovelware, it actually managed to strike a deal with Sega. In the late 90s, the Dreamcast was, well, dead, and Empire was tasked with porting a lot of its games to either computer or other consoles. This, combined with an agreement with Microsoft that let them publish their PC games in Europe, made the company grow substantially, and this growth led to Empire acquiring more developer studios under its lead, notably Razorworks Studios. Razorworks was initially known for developing helicopter simulations, and right after being bought by Empire, they started becoming known for racing games. A racing game they are well known for is Total Immersion Racing, released in 2002, which was positively reviewed by various outlets at the time. They are now dead since Empire went bankrupt, but the team of developers was definitely talented, and after the parent company's demise, most of them went to work directly for big companies such as Sega. So Empire was well known for striking deals with companies for licensed games, and in 2000 they did so with Ford, having the developer Elite Systems make a game based on the Ford racing brand for Windows computers, and then having the company Toolbox Design, which seems to not exist anywhere on the internet right now, make a PlayStation port of the game. This game was completely unremarkable and average, especially compared to what the console had to offer from its first-party developers. but it did indeed sell some copies. This was enough to make Empire decide it was time for a sequel, and they now had the fresh blood to do something interesting. That's when Ford Racing Evolution, later known as Ford Racing 2, was born. By analyzing the game's credits, we can get an idea of how the game team was composed, and we have some interesting people pop up here, especially for a budget title. Kevin Besant, who will be later known for his work on the Sniper Elite series, Lee Walton, one of the lead artists for Burnout Revenge, Mark Petty, who worked on titles such as Borderlands, MotorStorm and Resistance Fall of Man, Tim Folling as the music director, known for his awesome work on the NES Silver Surfer game, Helton Bird, who worked on Sonic R. Well, let's stop here. The team was pretty big and competent for a budget title, but there were definitely some constraints. First, the Ford license. While being a blessing, since it actually let Razorworks put real cars in the game, was also a curse, because Ford was paying for publicity and celebration of their brand, and this meant no damage at all. The game's collision have a sort of Gran Turismo 2 feel, as the cars seem to be indestructible, but as we know, this is often the case for games like this, because no car manufacturer wants to showcase their products in flames. That's why games like BeamNG or Burnout are so rare to see, because no car company in their right mind would want you to see their product blow up. Another constraint for the game was, of course, the budget. This game was conceived from the start as a budget title and had to be sold for a very low price, and in our case was just given for free in cereal boxes, so that should give you an idea about how low the budget was here. This low budget meant no licensed tracks whatsoever. But well, after addressing all of this, let's actually talk about the game and how it looks and feels. The game was released in 2003 for PS2, Xbox, Mac and PC. I own every single version of this game except for the Mac one, because I can't physically play it, I don't have a powered PC Mac. But the version I will be talking about today, and the one that you can see here, is the PC one, the one that came out of a cereal box, which I have played using a 360 compatible controller that provided me with the more console-like experience I could possibly have. Even though I think most of the kids that played this game when it came out of a cereal box actually used their dad's computer's keyboard, but I have finished it countless times with my keyboard, so I can assure you it's definitely playable that way too. The game is structured into two main modes, for challenge and for collection. These two modes are complementary. You do a series of challenges in the first one to unlock cars and trucks in the second one, and honestly, while being pretty short, I was able to finish the entire game in around 4 hours. The fourth challenge is what makes this game shine, in my opinion. The mod is very reminiscent of the Project Gotham Racing challenges, and while there's no kudos or points of any kind involved, it as you go to the same beat the challenge and unlock the car pacing PGR is known for. There are 8 types of challenges and 7 different car categories. The car selection is pretty good in my opinion. Not every single Ford car from the era is present here, but there are some peculiar ones like the Ford Explorer, which is something I really like since most racing games, especially licensed budget titles, focus on the most powerful and exclusive cars of a brand, while I personally like stuff like driving a Mazda Demio in Gran Turismo. Being able to play normal cars is something that is present here, and the car list is pretty good. There are some models that I would have liked to see, for example the Ka, the Mondeo or the Escort, but well, the car selection is pretty okay as is, honestly. Cars are decently differentiated from each other, and you can definitely feel the difference in power and weight between a F350 and a Focus, but while they definitely aren't a one-to-one simulation of the real deal, more like a generous approximation. I doubt that the F100 or the Thunderbird would feel this fast in real life. The track selection is quite interesting. There's no real tracks whatsoever because
I have no money!
But this didn't stop the developers from making some really original tracks, just like they did in Total Immersion Racing. Let's just say that not having to stick to licensed tracks has not limited them at all. They definitely have seen this as an opportunity and not a limitation, and while the critics from the era didn't quite like this, they definitely weren't looking at the full picture here. The variety of tracks is pretty wide. We go from California streets to NASCAR ovals to off-road Egypt and even exploding volcanoes. The way the team handled tracks really reminds me of old Sega games, and in a really positive way. Yes, we might not have a Nürburgring, but this is an arcade budget game. We don't need it, and we are honestly better off with made-up, more creative tracks. The gameplay and feel of the game itself is a mix between an arcade and a simulation one. It definitely is not realistic at times, but it is not forgiving at others, depending mostly on the car and the track used. This feels like a direct consequence of adapting the engine from a more realistic game, which is something Razorworks had to do here by modifying the engine they made for total immersion racing. This adaptation was done so that the game could feel more arcadey, but it gives it some quirks, such as having some races that drive smooth like butter and being able to complete them at the first try, even when doing a lot of errors in that race, and others that feel really difficult. Unlike most arcade games, you definitely can't brake while steering. You have to do it before, just like in simulation games, but the physics at other times just feels super wonky and arcadey. The difficulty settings are, well, let's face it, this is a budget game and it's mostly targeted at children, which are the ones getting it in cereal boxes, and the only way to get a real challenge is by playing in the R difficulty setting. I played this game a lot of times, but for this video I finished it again in a normal setting in about 4 hours total, and the difficulty here is okay. Not R honestly, but not too easy. Not because of the game's AI being super smart, but for it sometimes being cheap. Opponents will throw themselves at you if that can help them win, and honestly, I like this. It definitely makes the game feel more alive and arcade-like. There are also some assist settings that I like to just leave on, because they are, in my opinion, the developers' way to make this game what they envisioned, so a way to turn the total immersion racing engine into something arcadey. I just leave them on unless you want a super difficult experience with all off and the hard mode on. And speaking about the hard mode, that turns up the rubber banding significantly, which was a really common way to turn up the difficulty of a game during the early 2000s. And I can't really criticize it here, it's not as severe as the one present on more famous and acclaimed games such as Need for Speed Underground, where some races are borderline unplayable due to this issue. The game music is fitting. You can choose between different track styles, and being this a budget game, the OST was also recycled in another Empire game, Starsky and Dutch. While not remarkable or characteristic like Gran Turismo 2's OST or Driver's one, it's definitely nice, and I'll say that again, fitting. It also has a great intro song that for some reason just stuck in my head. Let's now focus on the gameplay mods, which in my opinion are what make this game unique. These mods are playable both in the 4th challenge and 4th collection mode. There are a total of 8. Standard mode, which is a normal, no question about it, no frills race, where you simply have to be first to win. Elimination, where the last 2 opponents to cross the line are progressively eliminated, leaving only you and your last opponent head-to-head in the end. A duel, which is exactly what it seems, a race between you and a different opponent for each lap of the track. Drafting, where you must slipstream your opponents to beat them. And then 4 different variations of a time attack mode. There is a simple one, where you just have to beat a time. A racing line mode, where you have to follow tightly a line or you get a penalty for some reason. A driving skills one, where you get extra time by passing through gates to get extra seconds, and finally seconds out, which is the same, but instead of passing through gates, you have to collect hourglasses. Honestly, the challenges aren't the most amazing or original ones to be seen in gaming history, but they flow pretty well with the driving engine used here, and in the 4th challenge mode, they serve to give you some kind of completion. It makes for a pretty great budget game package when bundled with the do whatever you want collection mode and the split screen multiplayer, and I think this is the real strength of the game. There's a lot a lot of budget racing titles, but most of them just feel like discount Gran Turismo wannabe clones at which they clearly fail for, well, budget reasons. But what Razorworks and Empire did here was quite interesting. You obviously can't compete with the big guys by just implementing what they can do better with more money. So what they did here was give the game some kind of gimmick, and the 4 collection and challenge gimmicks were what made this game stand out in my opinion, and it's what's making me talk about this game years and years later after I originally played it. Ford Racing 2, unlike other budget games, understands it is a budget title and tries to work around this by giving you some kind of unique experience. I honestly like this, and I think this is better than anything was in its class for the time, the budget-free racing serial class. And I think that this is why the game is important. Now, it's not a perfect game, as I said. The driving is okay but weird because it's basically a mix of simulation and arcade. The graphics looks okay for a PS2 game, but it could have definitely been improved in the other versions. And the game isn't that replayable after you complete the challenge mode and unlock all the cars. But I think that this is okay for a budget title from the 2000s. I think it's probably the best we could get at the time, honestly. I still think this game is important. Going back to the start of the video, if you were a kid in the early 2000s, getting new video games wasn't that straightforward. This was, for some people, including myself, one of the first real exposures to racing games. Living in the middle of fucking nowhere, Europe, getting games bundled with magazines, or, well, in this case, cereal boxes, was, for the great length of my life, the norm. I simply didn't live in a city, and the only video game store in my town was super overpriced and only carried 2 years old PS2 games at any given time. Magazine games were hit or miss. Sometimes you'd get Half-Life, Need for Speed Underground, Max Payne or Drive. And sometimes you'd get crap like Pepsi Max Extreme Sports or this bootleg Destruction Derby ripoff, but this was what we had to work with, and we played these games. For a few years, me and my sister had a connection so slow we couldn't pirate games even if we wanted, and we had a 30 gigabytes, yes, you heard that right, 30 gigabytes hard drive in our computer that couldn't fit more than one game at a time. So our routine was basically get a new game from a magazine or literally any other place, install it, play the shit out of it, uninstall it, and repeat the cycle. And when this is your gaming experience on a Pentium 3 computer that clearly wasn't made for more than running solitaire, getting a free game in a cereal box was magic, but you were used to getting crap in occasions like this. Ford Racing 2 was good and was something different, not the usual low-budget Gran Turismo or Colin McRae wannabe, but something that embraced its budget nature and tried to make the best out of it. And that's why I think this game is important. It sparkled in me, and according to the internet, a lot of other gamers, a genuine love for the arcade driving genre. It made us aware that there was something more than just endless races and time trials, and I will always love it for this reason. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. This part is unscripted, I'm just talking to the microphone and it feels weird, but I just wanted to thank you for the 500 subscribers. I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy that you all enjoy my videos. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a like to let me know, and you can also leave a comment here in the comment box. I will try to answer to every comment I can. And you can also follow me on Twitter, where I post random stuff, basically. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm trying to be more consistent with my uploads. I'm trying to upload at least 2 videos every month. But yeah, thanks again for watching. You will now find here some other videos I make because YouTube will suggest them to you. So maybe check them out if you want. And so that was all, folks. Have a great day and goodbye.